All right, NFL Week 6 power rankings. Here we go. Number 32, you have the New York Jets, and they're just not playing as good as they can be. They have some good playmakers. They have good players on defense and offense, but they're those good players are beat up, so that doesn't help. But it feels like, after those players that are good, that make a lot of positive plays, that make a lot of impact plays, Jermaine Johnson, Ahmad Gardner, you have Elijah Vera Tucker has been out for the season. It feels like after all of those kind of players, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, it feels like after all of those kind of players, it feels like the Jets have the rest of their guys just make more mistakes and make way more negative plays than they do good. So the Jets and the coaching, it feels like Aaron Glenn is not getting these guys ready every week. But year one, a lot of injuries. These aren't his players. He's not installing what he wants. So year one, okay, but I don't like how this team is not ready. They do have a lot of injuries. It's understandable, but the Jets are kicking off our power rankings for week 6. It's not a good football team right now. They are the worst team in the league. Only team that does not have a win. And then we're going to talk about the Raiders. Just get absolutely dismantled by the Colts. It was never even. I mean, in the first quarter, it felt like they were actually moving the ball pretty well. They went on the field a couple times, but then a couple mistakes. Just, there was an interception. There was the holding penalty. I believe it was a holding penalty the first drive. They were moving down, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot there. And then the block punt after that, it was just all Colts. But the Raiders, there's not really too much going for the Raiders right now. The defense isn't really there. Offense is, Geno Smith has just turned the ball over too much, and then when you don't have a defense that can really make up for that, it's a recipe for a very bad football team. 30 Titans are up 2 spots after an interesting win, a bizarre way to win, but they found a way to win. I thought that Cam Ward looked pretty good. I thought Cam Ward has looked actually pretty good. It's just the teams that they were playing, some really talented football teams, and the Cardinals have a good defense themselves. And it's just the way that the Cardinals lost was pretty insane. But the Titans, they found a way to beat the Cardinals and get their first win. You could definitely say it was a little. They were a little fortunate at times to win that game, but nonetheless, they win it and they move away from that dreaded number 32 spot just to number 30. Dolphins are down 1 spot. That first quarter, is the beginning of that game is what the Dolphins could be. They were up 17-0. Tua, this Dolphins team just taking advantage of those Panthers mistakes and ultimately just looking like a good football team. It looks like they've turned the corner, but then second half comes around, the fourth quarter comes around, and the Dolphins just fall apart. You have to find a way to win that game. They couldn't run the ball to save their lives, but they couldn't stop the ball to save their lives. It's just a very disappointing outing for the Dolphins, in which a game they should have won by the way they started, but they couldn't. And I don't think Tua is the problem. I think it's the in general Miami Dolphins team problem and a coaching problem. Mike McDaniels is not very good. I think he's good at calling plays. I think he's good at being creative, but I just don't think he's a good head coach. I still think he's capable of being a very good offensive coordinator, but head coaching wise, nah. He's not a head coach. He struggles to manage a game and such, and you know what? It is what it is. You're down 1 spot, very disappointing loss. 28, you have the Giants. 5 turnovers. 5 turnovers. You had a blessing to start the game. You're up 13-0, and then you turn the ball over 5 straight possessions. 5 straight times, I believe it was. So you started strong, but then you couldn't really get much going after that. Disappointing. Whatever. Moved down 1 spot, and then you have the team that beat them, New Orleans Saints. Rattler looked pretty good. And you know what? Throughout the first couple of weeks of the year, it seemed like the Saints are actually not that bad of a football team. Felt like, that the defense stepped up. Spencer Rattler played pretty good. The Saints team get 5. They get 5 turnovers. The defense does so. Pretty opportunistic defense right there, taking advantage of opportunities, and the Saints just find a way to win the game. Good job, Saints. They move up 3 spots to 27. Cincinnati, they're staying put. Play the Lions, one of the best teams in the league. As you see, I have them as the best team in the league. But the Bengals are here at 26, man. I mean, they're just a bad football team that just went up against the best team in the league right now, in my opinion. not too much you could do there, although the offense did get some things going. Feels like the offense is pretty good at making big plays happen, but you don't have the offensive line to let those big plays happen. So just kind of where they're at. Baltimore at 25, they're down 3 spots. I mean, no defense. It feels like all their superstars are hurt. Lamar's hurt, of course. You have Kyle Hamilton was out. You had so many guys out, but still, a lot of teams are dealing with injuries, not just the Ravens. So the Ravens going to take that L there, just not looking like a cohesive football team at all. But then you move up to number 24. You have the Carolina Panthers. I mean, they're impressive. It was a gritty win. They, when you go down 17-0, usually it's pretty much like, okay, game's over. For the most part. A lot of times, but then it's been a weird year in the NFL. But the Panthers move up 1 spot after they find a way to get a gritty win. Their run defense was phenomenal. Their run offense was phenomenal. Bryce Young, did a pretty good job fighting back into this game. So props to the Panthers for finding a way to win this game, and where it was looking really ugly early on. But good job, Panthers. Find a way to win that game, but you cannot be going down. You cannot be starting like that. You won't be as fortunate versus other teams that you play. Then you have Cleveland at number 23. I know it's kind of weird. I have them moving up a spot here. It's just kind of the way I felt that weekend went. Even though they lost, they put up a really good fight against a good Vikings team. The Vikings are a good football team. Quarterback is a bit of a question, but Carson Wentz has looked pretty good. But back to the Browns, I mean, Dylan Gabriel. I thought Dylan Gabriel had a phenomenal outing. I mean, going up against a Brian Flores defense that likes to mix things up, they like to make things he likes to make things very hard on any quarterback going to play the Vikings. It doesn't matter where it is, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in Minnesota, or wherever Minnesota's going. Dylan Gabriel, I have to say, Dylan Gabriel gets pretty much an A+ for me in this game. I mean, phenomenal way to start your career. Go out there against a Brian Flores defense that's notorious for disguising things, making you have to make reads after the snaps, post-snap, and I thought Dylan Gabriel did a very good job doing that. So I did move the Browns up 1 spot. I think the Browns could be a team to watch out for going into the rest of the year. I think they have a pretty interesting game. Playing the Steelers this weekend. The Steelers are coming off the bye, but I think that's a true test. I think this game, I think the Browns have a good shot at beating the Steelers. Dylan Gabriel in there, if you could take advantage of that Steelers defense, which, the Steelers have an opportunistic defense, but, we'll have to see the Browns do it regardless. Quinshon Judkins looks phenomenal. Dylan Gabriel looked great. You have some good tight end options. I mean, the Browns have a decent football team. I think they could really jump up these power rankings and get better as the season goes on. And I would even go to say that they have a chance to win their division because I'm not sold on the Steelers yet, but Cardinals are down 2 spots. They're very, very fortunate to not be down anymore. I was very close to moving the Panthers and the Browns up more. Probably could have swapped the Cardinals and the Panthers, but I did. It's just like I still know that the Cardinals are a talented football team. They're just so inconsistent. That's their issue. They beat themselves. They shoot themselves in the foot. Kyler Murray is inconsistent. It's just this entire team is very inconsistent. You can't. You just saw what the Colts did previously. You just saw what the A.D. Mitchell did versus the Rams, and then it happens the week after. It's just you cannot allow these things to happen. It's inexcusable. There's no excuse for it. It's pathetic. But yeah, I mean, Baltimore, the Browns. I mean, not too bad. I think they're. Why am I talking about the Browns? I was talking about the Cardinals. Why do I keep going back and forth? But the Cardinals are down 2 spots. Very fortunate to not move down anymore. But after a 2-0 start, they're off the big losing streak and just can't get anything going. But you have the Bears staying put. They're at the bye. Other teams were not fortunate coming out of the bye. A lot of teams actually moved down just because of the nature of the NFL and just the way it's been going. So the Bears are fortunate not to move down. But Cowboys are up 3 spots. I know a lot of people are going to complain about the Cowboys being over the Bears, but it's just the way the power rankings went. And the Cowboys earned earned the right to move up 3 spots and over the Bears. I still think the Cowboys are a better team than the Bears. I think if they play again, the Cowboys will win. But it's not always, head to head isn't always the the deciding factor. It's really like the eye test. Like, what are we seeing from these teams? You actually have to go and watch these games, and kind of gather some context for yourself rather than just looking at the end score and the box score and be like, hey, and making your opinions from there. It's not an accurate way to get an idea of what these teams are about. But the Cowboys, Dak Prescott with a phenomenal outing versus the Jets. Dak Prescott is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, if not the best. If the season were to end today, he's the season MVP. Then you have, just CeeDee Lamb's here. What the heck? But George Pickens stepping up. Javonte Williams had a major game around the football, and give them props for their offensive line being pretty much their entire offensive line was hurt and out this game. Yet Dak Prescott finds a way to have a big game. Javonte Williams, they find a way to get that run game going. The Cowboys, they look pretty good. They look pretty good, even against the Jets team that, they're 0-5. They haven't been coming. Obviously they're 0-5. They're not a good football team. But did the Cowboys defense turn a corner this game? We'll see. They did play the Jets, but had a good game nonetheless. The Steelers were on the bye. They moved down 3 spots just because of the other teams that are ahead of them. Once again, the head-to-head is, not always, a good indicator of who is the better team. I still think the Vikings are the better team, even though the Steelers are 3-1 and they're all the way down here at 19. Your record doesn't mean everything either. It's the eye test, the context, and the Steelers have beaten up on some bad teams, but I'm just not sold on the Steelers myself. Even though 19 may be a little low for being 3-1, I just don't think they're better than these other teams that are ahead of them. The Vikings, they're down 1 spot. They won, but it was just other teams that had to move up that were behind them. And it's rare for a team to win and move down. The NFL is crazy. The power rankings here are crazy because that's the way the NFL has been. I know it's odd. A lot of things are happening this week in my power rankings, but sometimes it's just how it is. But then you have Minnesota, just, they find a way to win. Carson Wentz is playing good. Is this another quarterback that Kevin O'Connell finds a way to get the best out of him to, Carson Wentz was clutch in this game. That's something, you don't really hear, but Carson Wentz was clutch. He led a game-winning drive, made a phenomenal throw to practically win the football game at the end there. Wentz is playing good. This Vikings team, they have one of the better rosters, and they're not even fully healthy, and they found a way to, drive down the field and, and beat a Browns team that is no joke. I know the Browns are at 23. They're 1-4, but that Browns team, especially that defense, is no joke. That's going to be a sneaky team going into the middle of the season here, especially with Dylan Gabriel giving them a little more, of a dynamic factor on offense. 17, the Falcons moved down 2 spots. They're in the bye, but like I was saying, it's just a year where things are weird, but other teams had to move up, and you're going to see here why they moved down 2 spots. The teams like the Texans and teams like the Patriots were behind them, and those teams you just have to move up. The Patriots are up 5 spots after just an incredible. Let's start with Houston. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the Texans, speaking of incredible offensive explosion, they find a way to put up 44 points. The Ravens are beat up, and they're not looking like the typical Ravens, but nonetheless, when you go out there and you dominate a football team like that, offense plays as well as, it hasn't been playing well, so coming out and putting 2 strong performances together, even though the Titans, it was just a fourth quarter, wasn't like dominant or consistent, but this was. This game versus the Ravens was, and C.J. Stroud went off. Very, very good outing for the Texans, but let's see them continue it because they have a big test coming up this weekend. Chargers are down 10 spots. They're just so beat up, but they're in a 2-game losing streak, and Herbert was their leading rusher. Omarion Hampton went down, which kills, but I think the Chargers are a better football team than being down here at number 15, but they're just not healthy, and I can't reward them. I can't keep them the same if they're still losing games. There are a lot of teams beat up this year, and a lot of other teams are still, like the Niners for a perfect example here, finding a way to win games against the best teams in the league. But the Chargers, I mean, they didn't even really put up a good fight. They went up 10-0. It was looking good. The injury to Marion Hampton doesn't help, but still, 2-game losing streak. A couple things went good for them, went their way versus the Broncos. So, unfortunately, they had to move down this far, and then get the Patriots up 5 spots. I mean, holy heck. Talk about a team that has really come out of the weeds. Drake May playing phenomenal. I wanted to move them up more, but I just can't move them up that far, even though, that might be the most impressive win of the year. Maybe the Broncos win over the Eagles is up there, but it may be one of the more impressive wins of the year in terms of them going into Buffalo, prime time, Sunday Night Football, and finding a way to beat the Bills. I mean, they stopped the run well. They're very good at stopping the run. They're very good at running the football themselves. If Stevenson, there were a couple of things that happened in the game that don't typically happen, but props to the Patriots for getting the turnovers they got. The Bills typically don't turn the ball over, but the Patriots, I mean, heck, they find a way to beat one of the best teams in the league. And if they continue to win, they're going to continue to move up here. I honestly feel like 14 is low because they're playing at such a high level. But at the same time, it's just I can't move them up ahead the Packers, the Chiefs. And I know the Packers have had a couple of interesting games here and there, but the Packers are a really good football team. It's just Jordan Love is kind of a question there, but they moved down too because they're on bye, but. It really feels like, when you're going on a bye week, it feels like, you're not always going to stay the same. If you're staying the same, even if it's not their fault, technically, if you're staying the same, you're not getting better. I know it's the bye, so you're not really, you can't really use that. But at the same time, it's the same argument I'm using for all these other teams. It's just the way the week went. I had to move other teams above them. They couldn't be above some of these other teams playing at the level that they are. The Chiefs were down 3 spots, man. I mean, heck, I thought the offense did turn a corner versus the Ravens. Even though the Ravens defense is looking as bad as it is, they did turn the corner, and the Chiefs found a way to put up a good offensive performance against a really good, Jaguars defense. And Jaguars have 15, 16 turnovers this year so far, only through 5 games. That's absolutely absurd. But Chiefs moving down 3 spots, man. I mean, it's just disappointing. The defense is a little worrisome. It feels like when they play a team, when they play an offense that has the talent, that could out physical them. I feel like you could outclass the Chiefs defense by being more physical. If you could do that and just play clean football, I think that this Chiefs defense is not very good. Like, I think they're going to have really good performances against some of the worst defenses or some of the bad offenses out there. But it feels like versus the offenses that are run well, that don't turn they just, that are physical, they run the football well. I feel like the Chiefs are going to struggle against those teams. And, that's proven true so far. But they're down 3 spots after a disappointing loss versus the Jaguars, in which they, have the Chiefs ever lost a game being up 14 points like that and then losing? I'm not sure. It was a primetime game too. It's just, it just is what it is what it is. Mahomes was absolutely phenomenal, but there's only so much you can do by yourself. The pick 6 wasn't good, no, but that was just Devin Lloyd making a big time play. The Commanders are up 1 spot after a great performance. After starting the game, they were down 10 points. They found a way to claw back into this game and then ultimately just really, have a very convincing win over a good football team. Now, the Chargers are really beat up. They're definitely not, they're definitely like a shell of the team they were to start the season. But nonetheless, you beat a Justin Herbert-led team 27-10, that's pretty impressive. Jaden Daniels looking good coming back. You have that young running back showing out and playing pretty good football. It feels like the Commanders are a pretty damn good football team. I don't know if they get to the heights they did last year, but heck, the Commanders have a good squad, man. I mean, they're up 1 spot. They have a big win over the Chargers. Even though depleted, you still found a way to win, and you beat them convincingly. The Broncos up 3 spots. I wanted to move the Broncos up more, but it just feels like the other teams ahead of them are just a little better at the moment. But if the Broncos keep putting wins like that together, that may not be the case. Up 3 spots, big time win versus the Eagles. I will say that they are a bit fortunate to win, considering the Eagles just did not call good plays, did not play to their strengths. I don't know why they didn't run with Barkley, but nonetheless, you can't take it away from the Broncos beating the Eagles. The Eagles are still a very good football team, of course. But that fourth quarter was just absolutely incredible. They dominated that fourth quarter. If they could put that together for a full game, I'm not too sure if there's many other teams in the league that could beat them. I really don't think there is, but heck, you keep putting together performances like that, you find ways to win those games. Sean Payton calling and doing things only Sean Payton does, going for the 2-point conversion to take the lead, put a little pressure on the Eagles offense, and it was a good call. So they're up 3 spots, finally winning that close game. It felt like there were a lot of close games that didn't really go their way. Like, I felt like the Chargers game didn't really go their way. They should have had that one maybe. So the Broncos, and that was when the Chargers were more healthy too. So the Broncos are definitely a team that probably going to be very difficult to slow down. I could see the Broncos winning the AFC West, which is actually something I was talking about going into this year. The Broncos could win. It was looking like it was going to be the Chargers, but with all the injuries they have going on, both starting tackles, I don't know about them. And the Chiefs, the Chiefs are going to be hot here. They're going to be a good team as well. I think they're going to contend and be close, but I just think the Broncos are a better overall football team. They're going to they're going to find a way to win the division over Kansas City. And 9. The 49ers literally take the term next man up to a whole new level. Mac Jones is playing at a great level. Maybe you could say that the win was a little fortunate and some things went their way, but nonetheless, sometimes that's what needs to happen. When you're as beat up as you are, you still find a way to go into SoFi, to go into the Rams' home and beat them on primetime Thursday Night Football. And the Rams are one of the better football teams in the league too, so yeah, man. The Niners just finding ways. That's the thing, I talked about many other teams being beat up and, today in these rankings, and the Niners are just as beat up as anyone, and they're still finding ways. They just beat possibly the best team in the NFL in the Rams. I think the Rams are the best team in the NFL. Now, it is a divisional game. Sometimes wacky things happen in the division games, but the Niners are 4-1, man. I can't ignore that they're 4-1. I'm moving them up 5 spots. They should probably move them up more, but it feels like some of these other teams are just better. That's just why I didn't move them up more. But they're definitely a top 10 team. Just think, this team being this good when they're this beat up, if wait until they're fully healthy. When they are fully healthy, this may very well be the best team in the NFL, and I don't even think it's going to be close. They're so well coached, so just everything is so good about them. God damn. Niners up 5 spots. I can't say enough good things about them, but all right, moving up to 8 through 6, then we'll get to the top 5. Seahawks, they should have won this game. You had a chance to go down and win the game. Donald just throws a pick, and nonetheless, it's it's a good outing versus one of the better teams in the NFL in the Bucs. The Seahawks are a very few plays away from being 5-0, but they're not. But nonetheless, they're still one of the better teams in the league. They play really good defense. They play, offense is just as electric as any other. JSN playing at such a high level. They just ran to a Bucs team that is clutch and somehow, find a way to win games late. They've done it every single game this year so far. Then you have the Rams moving down 3 spots. This is a game you have to win, right? We just talk about the Niners playing so well and what they're doing. It's impressive, but you just gotta find a way to win this one. You could say a couple things went the Niners' way, this and that, but you just have to find a way. I know you're on a short week, but the Niners are too. You should win this game at home. Very beat up Niners. I'm not discrediting the beat up, the Niners in any way. It's just the Rams need to win this one. They need to find a way to win this one. They couldn't. So they're down 3 spots. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league. Being at 7 here doesn't really suggest that, but I do think they're one of the best teams in the league. Towards the end of the year, I think they're going to be talked about as, I still think they are right now. But they're still one of the best teams in the league. They still may very well be the best team in the NFC, even though they lost to the Niners. Teams that are better than another team lose to those teams sometimes, and I still think the Rams are better than the Niners. But after that game, maybe not. But we'll see as the season goes on. The Jaguars up 4. Who would have thought the Jaguars being in the top 10? I feel like I may be the highest on the Jaguars than anyone else, even before that Chiefs win, I felt like I was much higher on them than a lot of people were. But I felt like it was warranted. I mean, we're talking about the Colts being 4-1. We're talking about some of these other teams being good, and I mean, the Jaguars are right there with those teams. I mean, you just beat the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. You beat Patrick Mahomes, and you know that last drive was absolutely phenomenal. The only thing I question about the Jaguars is kind of like nitpicking, but it's just like they've gotten so many turnovers, and how sustainable is it to get that many turnovers in those big moments? It's not always going to happen, but nonetheless, they do it. They find a way to win, and that's just the difference in these big games sometimes. And Mahomes made that mistake, and Devin Lloyd took it for 6, and the Jaguars, and then they had that big drive at the end of the game. It was absolutely incredible. The Jaguars are one of the hotter teams in the NFL as well, just playing phenomenal football. Defense is playing out of this world. Offense is doing what they need to do, and yeah, it's just my biggest question. Another question I have for the Jaguars is just, could Trevor Lawrence keep them afloat? I truly believe the Jaguars have one of the best have one of the better rosters. The offensive line is playing well. Their defense is playing good. It's just, can Trevor Lawrence just not screw up? I hate to put it that way, but that's just how it feels like. It feels like Trevor Lawrence is so inconsistent. If he can stay consistent, play as good as he has been, he played decent versus the Chiefs, made a couple boneheaded mistakes, all quarterbacks do, but we've seen in the past, can Trevor Lawrence just be consistent? If he could, then the Jaguars are one of the best teams in the league. They truly are. All right, top 5, here we go. Bucks are 5 after a big-time win over the Seahawks. I mean, clutch. I don't know how else to describe the Bucks. They're clutch. They find ways in big moments, and they did that. And I know I don't have the top 5 rank change, like the +4 or like the plus or minus. I don't know why. But the Bucks move up 2 spots, I believe. Let me double check my paper here. Yeah, yes, the Bucks moved up 2 spots from 7. So you find a way to beat a Seahawks team that are about as hot as it comes. They're a very hot football team. They're one of the best. They're still one of the better teams too. There are a lot of good teams this year. There are a lot of very good teams. You go from all the way from 1 to maybe 10. You throw the Chiefs in there. We'll see how the Texans keep playing. I mean, all these teams are capable of doing damage, not only, just in the regular season, but the playoffs. All these teams are built to do that. Commanders are too. They can find, if they could be consistent, do what they could do against the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers are beat up. They could do that every week. Still, Chargers are sneaky, but there are a lot of good football teams this year. The Bucs find a way. They'll give you a heart attack, but they find ways to win. Colts, they move up 4 spots. I mean, with other teams losing and them just it's the Raiders, but they did what good teams do. Dominating the Raiders, doing what they did. It's they do lose their kicker, which is a little concerning. We'll see how much that affects them in some of the bigger games they play. But 4 spots, a dominant win versus the Raiders. No, it's just the Raiders, but they pretty much dominated the Raiders all the way through. Number 3, you have the Bills. They're down 1 spot. Are the Bills a little suspect right now is my question. Reason why I'm asking is, their schedule is very favorable. Beginning of the year, every game was a dogfight except for except for the Jets game. Pretty much dominated the Jets. They barely even went anywhere the first couple of weeks. So it felt like, almost all their games at the beginning of the season were pretty much at home, and then they traveled to the Jets, which isn't very far, right in New Jersey. There, even though they're in New York, we all know they're in New Jersey. But nonetheless, but we did see yesterday versus the Patriots. I mean, they played a very, very gritty Patriots team. Mike Vrabel always has his teams ready, and Josh Allen can't do it all by himself. Josh Allen's wonderful. We all know what Josh Allen is, but he can't do it by himself. He's gonna need some help, and I feel like without Josh Allen, the Bills are probably like a 5 or 6, maybe 7 win team, honestly. But with Josh Allen, of course, the Bills are one of the best teams, and just with his playmaking abilities. But I question, if you can't get the run game going, you struggle to get some of those weapons going. with the defense, I mean, the defense has not played well themselves either. They have struggled. They have not been very good against the run. And they have not been able to, now this week they couldn't run themselves, so couldn't really control the game, couldn't really control the clock. Even though this game was close all the way through. We'll see. They're still 4-1. They're still the Bills. They still have that reputation, but a little questionable. A little questionable, to be honest with you, for some things. Eagles are down one spot. This is another team that's, WTF was in the fourth quarter. Like, those are games, once the Eagles are up by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, kind of like, okay, you can turn this off. You know how the game's going to go. But regardless, I just don't understand the play calling. I don't understand why this team is inconsistent as they are right now. The defense is inconsistent. The offense is inconsistent. They have no consistency. They're still here at number 2 because they're still 4-1, just like the Bills are. But you're just a couple plays away from maybe the Bucs beating you. Bucs were really close. Baker Mayfield interception. A block kick. The Cowboys a couple plays away. I mean, this is an Eagles team that has struggled to begin the year. They've been fortunate to pull out some of those wins, but they do. Nonetheless, they do. That's the bottom line. They found a way, but they're going to have to be a little more convincing if they want to be one of those teams down the stretch here that are going to make noise in the playoffs. Like I said, I don't really understand why you're trying to run to pass the football as much as you were when you have Saquon Barkley. Doesn't make sense to me. You just paid him. Feed him the football. I don't know if they're trying to make A.J. Brown happy or trying to get the guys in the passing game happy and get them going. Maybe that's a thing, but I feel like Nick Sirianni's got to step in and be like, hey, no, we're running the football here. So it is on him as well, but disappointing. The Eagles had the talent to be one of the best teams again this year, and they did this last year. They do have a new offensive coordinator. It takes time. It takes time to get adjusted, but just got to figure it out. Lions. Best team in the league. They move up 2 spots from 3 to 1. They're the best team in the league. Week 1 is kind of a wash at this point. They've just been dominant every single week. They dominate the Bears. They dominate the Bengals. But I don't really know what else to tell you. They pretty much beat up on the Ravens any way they wanted to. I believe the way they beat the Browns was really impressive. I had to go back and look at some of their games, but the way they beat the Browns, man, that's impressive stuff. 34-10 against the Browns. That Browns defense is no joke. I don't care who they're playing there. That's not an easy defense to do what they did against them there. But nonetheless, Lions are the best team in the NFL right now. I don't think I think it's pretty easy to make that call as well, to make that statement. Pretty easy to make that argument. Jared Goff, Monra, they run the football. They're about as physical as you can get. They're the team, man. They're the team. The team to beat right now. But all right, fellas, I'm gonna get out of here. I know it was a little, I had a couple of points in this video where it's like, why are you jumping back to this team? You just talked about this team, and you just kind of odd. But appreciate you guys for watching. This is Jason. A good time talking some football, y'all. Let me know what you think about these power rankings. Give me your top teams in the comment section below. I'd like to hear them. But thank you guys for watching. This is JW. I'll catch you guys next time.